Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report. Chip Nellinger, Arlan Suderman joining us this weekend. Chip, another wild week in the market, saw some extreme volatility. Soybean prices trying to make a comeback on Thursday, but what pressured prices and then brought them back ultimately?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of factors at work here. First and foremost, I think that there had been a pretty large spec position of long corn short beans and long wheat short beans. There were some rumors and some talk floating around middle week here about Russia potentially allowing Ukraine to export some grain out of the Black Sea area for humanitarian purposes. That was enough to cause some profit taking and some unwinding of that spread. And then I think beans are just competitive. I think that basis levels in Brazil have been slowly rising. That means they don't have a lot of exportable supplies left. We don't have a lot domestically here. In a lot of areas, basis is $1 over. And, I think we're in kind of the dog days of summer here where we're going to have to really scrounge around to find some remaining supplies until we get some new crop supplies here this coming fall on beans. And I think the action in corn and wheat tell you that commercials and end users are willing buyers on the break. It hasn't been, a waterfall sell-off here. There's been a lot of buying on the breaks and in rallies intraday. So yeah, I think we're on good footing across the board, quite honestly, in spite of a lot of volatility.
Well, Arlan, the market's watching planting progress, a lot of concern in that northern corn belt. It looks like favorable conditions, at least midweek, for North Dakota, South Dakota planting. But realistically, past that prevent plant date or that crop insurance date for corn, we're running into the date for soybeans. How many acres can get planted in a short amount of time?
Yeah, that's a real problem. And I think everyone's going to be looking at Tuesday's crop progress report delayed a day this coming week because of the holiday to just see how much got accomplished. And it's really northwestern Minnesota, northeastern quadrant of North Dakota, where we're going to have the big problems around the Red River Valley, where we're going to struggle to get spring wheat planted, corn planted, soybeans planted. We have a little bit more time with soybeans than what we do the other two crops. And I think we're going to probably lose 900,000 to maybe 1 million acres of corn in that region overall, maybe as high as that on spring wheat as well. And so that's a real concern going forward. Normally the markets wouldn't care about that area, but this year every acre counts, particularly for the corn and the spring wheat markets. And so that's a real problem.
Arlan, considering we may have some prevent plant acres up in that northern corn belt where they just had some issues planting this year, do you think that is baked into the prices today?
Yeah, I don't really think it is yet. I think the market's focused on the rapid planting progress we saw the previous week. And they see Iowa and Illinois basically caught up, in fact, ahead on soybeans and thinking, oh, okay, we're going to be fine. And typically the market doesn't worry about acres in northwest Minnesota, northeast and North Dakota, but every acre counts this year. So we're talking about the possibility of losing 900,000 to 1 million acres of corn, maybe 500,000 to 1 million acres of spring wheat. Sugar beets are going to be a real problem. That's probably the crop that has the most concerns right now, trying to get what they need planted. So it's going to be a real problem in that area. And eventually that ends up impacting the balance sheet because, as I said, we need every acre of corn this year and spring wheat as well. And I don't think the market's really focused on that. I think they're watching the headline numbers to this point.
Well, Chip, still a lot of questions out there, especially when it comes to how many exports is Russia actually going to let out of Ukraine. A lot of issues still with planting, but a lot of questions right now on is the top of the market in after we saw some of this relief come this week. What do you think?
Yeah, I would doubt it. We haven't really had a good old-fashioned scare, right? If you just back up a step and kind of project out, we typically have a price break in mid to late May anyway, assuming that we have good planting conditions and things are going in the ground well. So I think this is just your normal, like Arlan was alluding to, the market's perceived that the crop's in the ground, everything's great, we're getting rain. And that's true in areas where the crop is in and up and growing. Couldn't be almost a more ideal conditions, but there's still crop left to plant. I think that, the top isn't in. If it is, we should get some sort of a strong retest. But Arlan was mentioning, and it is true, we are supremely tight on things. I would be very shocked if Ukraine does export anything, if Russia allows that. I think it's a PR game at this point in time, and they're kind of using the news flow to their advantage to make them look good, make themselves look good. I doubt if anything comes out of there. Any little threat at all, 10 days of hot, dry weather in the western corn belt at all, and this corn market could explode higher on uncertain yield potential.
Well, a lot going on the protein side of the ledger as well. We'll get into livestock prices this Memorial Day weekend coming up.